Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Triangle Offense. I'm Munish, and as always, I'm joined by Nishant, who's gleaming from the win that the Lakers pulled out today against the Phoenix Suns. Not surprising at all if you've been listening to Nishant, but I kind of expected the Phoenix Suns to come out victors, especially after the comeback they had in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, it was pretty close, but then the Lakers just ran away. AD coming to the party finally after taking up all the responsibility for the loss in Game 1. But the even more fun thing is the Clippers are 2-0 down after their home stretch. Luka Doncic is just torching them. It's so much fun to watch. Paul George is burning yet again. Well, Kawhi Leonard, got decent numbers for himself, but the Clippers are going down, and they're going down pretty fast, I must say. Another game that nobody cares about, the Brooklyn Nets picked up another win against the Boston Celtics. They're kind of walking all over them now. We'll recap these games today in today's episode. We'll start off with the Brooklyn Nets and Boston Celtics and just get that out of the way because that was not a game that was worth talking about. Joe Harris went off 7 threes out of 10. Kevin Durant got 26. Harden got 20 himself. Kyrie got 15. Well, Jason Tatum got injured, and that was the end of the game, end of the series for Boston Celtics. Is there anything to even look forward to in the series now?
No, it's like for the third game straight, there is nothing to look forward to in the series. The series is over. There's just there's no point. It's really I'm trying to find some kind of like a plus point here or something to look forward to, but there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. Now even I'm convinced this is a sweep. I was thinking maybe the Celtics can get a game here and there, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I don't think the Celtics want to play the remaining two games either. I mean, it's just embarrassing enough for them, and they should just. It's given the kind of franchise that they are, it's even more embarrassing because it's a big top franchise. You don't expect them to be swept. 3 conference finals in the last 4 years. 2 of the biggest superstars, upcoming superstars in the squad, and both of them injured now. Jason Tatum hopefully should be back for Game 3, but well, it's a lost cause. So Brooklyn Nets soaring. They'll be faced there. I think they'll face a match in Milwaukee Bucks. That'll be a contest to watch out for. But until then, they can just relax, play their combos, play Nick Claxton or whoever, and just see out the series.
Yeah, maybe just give Pritchard some minutes, just do a little, fool around a bit there. But yeah, the series is over. I mean, it is over. Should have been over before it began. But now I don't even have a hope of seeing some kind of gentleman sweep. Not only are the Brooklyn Nets big three firing, they're actually playing defense. They need to thank one Mr. Green for this because he seems to have taken over command of the defense whenever he's on the court and loads of experience, right? And it helps, especially to get communication flowing, which is often key. Most of these teams, when you've got the kind of playoff experience that the Brooklyn Nets have, it often boils down to somebody taking the lead to coordinate and marshal the defense and ensure that communication lines are open. When somebody's making a switch call, when there's a screen call, if you're going under a call, if you're switching on the guard and you're a big man who came up from the paint, make that call, but let it be known. And oftentimes when communication breaks down, you find these open lanes for people to drive into, or people don't box out on rebound sometimes because you're expecting the other guy to get it, and it's a breakdown. So not only are the big three firing on offense, which everyone and their uncle predicted, they're actually defending. The rebounding is not off the mark at all. Blake Griffin suddenly seems to have found new life. Not a superstar by any stretch, but he's giving them valuable minutes. And on top of that, they seem to be digging points from their backup players also. Joe Harris, who's supposed to be like, he's their Steve Kerr, if I could draw a Bulls analogy. He's the guy that makes, that sinks shots if you can get him open and if you get him the ball. A high impact player. You'll give him 3, maybe 5 touches in a match and he'll knock down a couple of shots. But the way the game has evolved, anyone who can shoot like Steve Kerr could back in the day is now going to get 8-10 shots minimum, especially from beyond the arc, right? And when you shoot it like Joe Harris was shooting it, bad enough the 3 superstars are firing, and then Joe Harris hits 7 of 10 from 3. It's ridiculous. You just can't compete. Those are Steph Curry numbers. You can't compete with that. So that was a rout. It'll be something like that for the remaining 2 games. This is a sweep. The series is over.
Absolutely. I don't think we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics anymore this season. Let's get to the LA teams and we'll start off with the Lakers against the Sun. What an incredible game that was. Game 2. AD coming out all guns blazing right from the get-go, right? I mean, the first quarter itself, you saw that he was hustling. He was out-rebounding Ayton. He was kind of rubbing into his body, getting him kind of intimidating him. You said that AD needed something to light him up, and this was exactly what it was. He came up with 34 points and 10 rebounds. At the end, he got that 10th rebound as well, 7 assists, and also 3 blocks. So this was the AD we know. This is the AD we know. Any concerns of injury all wiped out with this performance. And do you think he's going to stay as motivated for the rest of the playoffs?
It's tough to tell, but I would imagine so. And actually, one of the strengths of the Phoenix Suns is what I'm banking on to keep Anthony Davis and the others motivated is they're a borderline fearless team, Phoenix Suns. Sometimes they might get uh, uh, hassled on court by either a dazzling play or aggressive offense, but by nature they don't enter the game fearing anyone, and they're always in your face. You see all of these, like Cam Payne had himself a game,
Yeah.
and he was getting up in LeBron's face. He was mouthing off at AD, and they're very feisty like that. It's good to
Yep.
see. It's good to see a young team like that. But when you're mouthing off, you also risk um, having good players give it back to you. There are some players that just can't give it back and it works, and then there are some players that it's like poking a sleeping dragon, as it is with LeBron and AD most of the time. They're too nice to um and that's what separates players like Kobe and Michael Jordan, right? They're vicious without provocation, like for no good reason they'll just come out and kill you. With AD and LeBron, it's like they're methodical, they're professional about it, they're nice about it until they get poked the wrong way, and then the monster comes out. So I don't think Phoenix are going to shut up this series. They're going to keep poking the bear, and let's see. And by no means is this a done series. I think the fight is still on. It's just 1-1. Phoenix have played really well. So
Yeah.
it'll be an interesting series, and that's kind of what will keep AD motivated. I think that game one was embarrassing for him. He said it a bunch of times. And great to see that's leadership there to make no excuses, but to vocally come out and time again say, I screwed up, it's all on me, there's no way we can win if I play that bad. And he wasn't
Yep.
mincing his words. He said he was atrocious, he said he was very poor, and he came out. His shot still wasn't dropping all that well in the beginning, but that's what great players do. When the shot doesn't drop, take it to the hoop.
Yep. Phoenix didn't really have a bad game, like you said, right? Booker went off, he got 31 points. No 3-pointers from him because the defense was so good. Campaign really, Chris Paul was missing, but Campaign really kind of made up for his absence as well. What a game he had, 19 points. Aiton had a good game himself, getting himself a double-double too. But Chris Paul, you think his absence made the difference here? Because despite his absence, he played like 20-odd minutes. Yet it was just a 7-point game. And you think Chris Paul being there on the court would have made a difference?
It's got to be frustrating if you're the Lakers, right? Like every year, every series, you trounce teams, and then there's always an excuse given.
No, not an excuse.
No, I'm not
just
saying this is an excuse, but I'm saying if you're the Lakers, it's going. This is what it's going to get bandied about for sure. People are going to talk about how had Chris Paul been fit, because most sports shows, the way they're designed, they force the debate. They force a debate even when there is none, right? So if somebody is going to say the Lakers played well, by design, most of these sports podcasts and shows have somebody else saying no, but if only, blah blah blah. So now they're going to hear about how Chris Paul was injured and that affected the Suns. It was still a close game. You know, who knows if Chris Paul was on the court? Blah blah blah. They pull up stats of how Chris Paul makes every team better, etc. You go back to last season, gentleman's sweep against the Portland Trailblazers in 5. Oh, but they were tired. Portland, they had to come in through the playing games. How much can Lillard do? But how is that anyone's fault that they came in through the playing game, right? Beat James Harden and Russ Westbrook team again in 5. Like that's 2 MVP players. That shouldn't be happening. 5 games, just swept them aside. Yeah, because they went small. They didn't have a big man, so that was a mistake from the GM, right? They should have held on to Capella and it would have been close. Oh, okay. Finals, Denver Nuggets. Yeah, but they just came off 2 back-to-back 7 games in. It's like, and then you win the whole damn thing. You're the champs. You're the champs. The champions. Yeah, but Dragic got injured in game 1 and Butler got injured in game 3 and Bam got injured. And then you come here and CP3. So it's got to be frustrating for the Lakers. But I guess maybe somebody look at the longevity of the Lakers, barring the regular season injury here. how long they've pulled through players like KCP, Caruso, LeBron, AD. Coming to the Chris Paul point, I think I remarked upon this before. This battle, this Phoenix versus LA series, it's an asymmetric battle. It's not a backcourt versus backcourt. Like if Portland played Golden State, even a fully fit Golden State, it'd be what? It'd be Klay Thompson and Steph against Lillard and CJ and Powell and whoever else they can piece together, because you'll need that many to beat that backcourt in Golden State. Here it's an asymmetric battle. It's the big two in Phoenix, which is their backcourt of Devin Booker and Chris Paul, versus the big two in LA, which is their front court of LeBron. And I know LeBron kind of plays point guard, but they have Schroeder also, so he's playing more of that wing role now. So LeBron and AD, backcourt, front court, asymmetric. Then who's the third best option in Phoenix? DeAndre Ayton. Who's the Lakers' third best option? Schroeder. Again, front court, back court, the other way around this time. Asymmetric battle. Though none of these guys are guarding each other very often, what it boils down to is the net difference between the big two of Phoenix and the big two in LA, and the net difference between Ayton and Schroeder. So in this asymmetric battle, Chris Paul would not be missed player-wise, points-wise, as much as he would in a series against a team with a solid backcourt, like say a Portland or even a Memphis for that matter, Brooks and Morant, right? So intangibles, is there a leadership impact? Sure, but I thought Cameron Payne and Jay Crowder both stepped up really well in very different ways. Cameron Payne first got hot from three, and then he got pumped and just the adrenaline was flowing, and then he made a bunch of hustle plays on defense, got in AD's face, and that was great. It didn't work out for them because AD came roaring back, but that's the best you can do, right? Some nights it works, some nights it doesn't. Crowder also came on, and I thought he had momentum shifting impact. Yes, he picked up a bunch of fouls, he picked up a tech early on. But in that third and fourth quarter, his grit, his defense, his physical presence, bumping bodies, it challenged the Lakers. Again, this game it didn't work because AD and LeBron started hitting him with pick and roll. Then it's too much. AD and LeBron is the most devastating pick and roll in basketball. You just can't compete. But I thought they kind of made up for the hustle and the leadership and the intangibles that Chris Paul brings. Was his leadership missed? Sure. But I don't think that would have saved the game.
It was great to see the Phoenix fans back in the stadiums shouting beat LA. I mean, when did you last see that? 2009, 2010 when Steve Nash was around and Kobe was around? Because Phoenix have not made the playoffs since then. The Lakers did not make the playoffs until last year for like 6-7 years now.
Thing, because you heard that wherever the Lakers went, it used to actually, it was loudest in Portland and Sacramento, because they still remember that series where they felt they got robbed, and probably they did.
Well, Sacramento, when did they last make the playoff? 15 years ago.
2000 whatever, they got robbed, and they did. Lakers got a bunch of favorable calls in I think the Western Conference Finals. But anyway, so it's been a while since Lakers were relevant, right? Since Kobe and his team won the chip, they've largely been nonsense. Even if they made the playoffs 1 year, they were useless. And then Kobe was out and he was getting older and he retired, and Lakers were garbage. And then LeBron came, but they were still garbage. They didn't make the playoffs. And then the one time they made the playoffs and went all the way, there were no fans. So this is like it's been ages since I heard that beat LA loud chant, and that was fun.
Yeah, it'll be great to see the staples. They won't be full. I think they're lesser in capacity, as you saw in the Clippers game as well. But it'll be fun to have the Lakers fans, at least in round 2, if they make it there. I'm sure they will make it there. But it'll be fun to watch them. Talking about the other team though, what's up with the Clippers? They're 2-0 down. They played both the games at home. Both lost. Luka Doncic is just torching them. He's made for the playoffs. We saw this coming. He's got 39 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. And the Mavs, I should say this, they picked up a pretty comfortable win against the Clippers. It was on and off until the third quarter, but then they just went off. The scoreboard just shows a 6-point difference, but it was easily 10, 12 plus until the last few minutes where they got a couple of threes.
Yeah, and they were cruising. They were cruising throughout the game. I know the scoreboard shows single digit, but it was the kind of game where they have a 10-point lead, then Clippers make a couple of shots. They think they're coming back. They get sucker punched. It's a 9-10 point lead again. Then Clippers have to claw back, make then sucker punch. It was one of those games
Yeah, nobody was playing defense in the first half. It was the first game since 1994 where both the teams had 70 plus points in the first
Oh,
half in
wow.
in playoffs. So nobody was playing defense. It was just like you shoot three, I'll shoot three, and Luka and Kawhi were just having a shootout among themselves. Kawhi got 30 in the first half. He showed up. He showed that he's still the player that we know, but then he has no support. I mean, when Paul George gets 1 out of 7 from three and no support whatsoever from the rest of the guys, you're not going to win against a team where Luka's scoring 30, 40 points, and then Tim Hardaway is getting 5, 6 threes, and then Porzingis gets your 20 points, which you expect from him. There's no way that you're going to beat the Mavs with no support.
I want to give a very simple example on Kawhi Leonard. And you'll see this anywhere around you in the corporate world. You get a promotion when you're exceptionally good at what you do and you've put in the time and you've delivered results. You get a promotion. And the higher up you go, the more you become a leader, the more your work is about getting the best out of the people that are in your team rather than you just getting your hands dirty and delivering outcomes and results. Right? And the thing with Kawhi is he's like that manager who struggles to delegate and who also struggles to, if he manages to delegate, he struggles to get his team to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's that manager that then has to go do it all. Stuff that his team's supposed to do, he goes and does for them because they're not able to do it. And it's just a mess. What I'm saying in quite a roundabout fashion is he doesn't have that leadership quality about him. He played exceptionally well. He was the best player on the court, arguably, right up there with Luka. But he couldn't get his team to perform. He couldn't get his team to defend. Let's start there.
Yeah.
He probably the greatest defender in the game, some would say, arguable heavily, but he's right up there. But where's your marshalling ability? You have two of, let's just be generous, the top 10 defenders in the league. I think that's a fair assumption. And y'all can't defend. This 20-something-year-old young dude in his second playoff year ever. He torched you last year as well, by the way, in his first year ever.
Yeah.
Not like it's something new. And nobody picks him up. I still see Pat Bev being put on Luka Doncic. I still see Jackson and all kinds of random people being put on Doncic. And this is when Doncic torches Kawhi and Paul George when they're defending him.
Yep.
Like, where's the accountability? So, Kawhi has failed as a leader. I think we're seeing that again. I don't think Rondo's having the kind of impact that they hoped he would have. And not only is he failing as a leader, he's not even doing that part where, okay, if none of y'all can do it, let me get the work done. They're just not taking on the assignment of Luka Doncic. Only when he gets double teamed does he see some elite defense on him. It's on and off. Some plays you'll see it, but like if this was a championship mentality team, the Clippers, put Paul George or Kawhi Leonard on Luka and pick him up from half court every single time. If you watch The Last Dance, you got to do basically what Scottie Pippen did to Magic Johnson. That's the level of respect with which you treat a player like Luka, because you remove him from the equation and the Mavs are what? Not only is he their chief scorer, he's also their chief facilitator and the guy through which the entire offense runs. Take him out of the equation, it's game over. The ball's not going to get to Finney-Smith and Hardaway and all the other sharpshooters that they have. They couldn't do that. They let Hardaway have another big game from 3. Porzingis, who again looked rank average on defense, still managed to get 3 steals, a couple of blocks here and there, hit some big threes, got 20 points. You're just not going to win playing like that. If you're not going to punish players that are having a bad day, if you're not going to pick up the best player on the other team with your best defenders, all the teams that you love and adore, all the superstars that you respect, they earned a name by showing up in the playoffs. By saying, I'm the best player on this team, I'm going to guard the best player on the other team and shut him down. It's how the best of the best did it. It's how the average among the average did it. Where are the Clippers? It's this team's done, man. I'm done with this team. It's just basement garbage.
I think it was Reggie Jackson yesterday who said that when they lost the first game, they went back, and Serge Ibaka was telling how they came back in Toronto, how they came back from 2-0 down to beat the Milwaukee Bucks. I think it is that a game early because now they're 2-0 down, and that speech would have probably been reserved for today. It would have been better. But teams that have gone 2-0 down after a home stretch are just 4-27 in playoff series previously. What happens now for the Clippers? Are they done? Is the series over? Do you see this being closed still? I mean, you got to go to Dallas and play 2 games now, and I don't see them beating them twice. They might just get 1 win there. And then it's 3-1 down, and then Clippers have to make a comeback like they lost last season. You see that happening?
Yeah, most teams that went 2-0 down and came back, and it's only 4, but almost all of them, if I'm trying to recollect, there was one team in the 2000s which was kind of meh, but most teams that did that were pretty spectacular teams where the 2-0 was an aberration. I think Hakeem and his Rockets did that once in the playoffs. It's going to be, I think it's incredibly tough because remember, they dropped 2 home games. They didn't just drop 2 games, they dropped 2 home games. So now the series goes to Dallas, where the next 3 games are going to be played. And the Mavs need to win 2 out of those 3 to close out the series. I like those
2 games are going to be played in Mavs at Dallas, and then they return back to the Staples. So it's 2-2-1-1-1.
Wait, who has, don't the Clippers have home court advantage?
Yeah, so it's 2-2-1-1-1.
Oh, that's weird. Oh, so I think they have to fit in the Lakers and the Clippers at Staples. So
that's the series format all for every team.
That's weird. Okay.
I think they changed it 2 years back where it's 2-2-1-1-1.
Okay, whatever. I think maybe the bubble impact on me is strong where this kind of didn't matter.
Where there were no home teams at all.
Yeah, but still, so they dropped 2 home games. Either way, over their next 3 matches, as long as the Mavs pick up 2 wins, and they do have 2 home games, I suppose, in those. So I don't like their chances. I just don't see the Clippers clawing back. This series is done, dare I say.
Well, you'll have to, assuming that the Lakers win and assuming that the Clippers lose, which means the Mavs win, you have 2 lower seeds going through.
Right.
Portland and Denver Nuggets are playing a close series that might as well end up with a lower seed. And not to forget, Memphis Grizzlies have the lead over the Utah Jazz. You might just have all the 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the second round.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a sight?
I mean, I don't see that happening, but it's still, it's on. It's quite a possibility.
Yeah, I think I'd still favor Denver and Utah. Yeah, I think Lakers going through is a distinct possibility. It's still a tight series. Let's see. But it serves the Clippers right? What, no matter what they say, they tanked. They tanked.
Yeah. There's no way you lose back-to-back games against OKC and Houston Rockets, who have won 1 game each in the last 2 months.
Correct.
And you lost to them in the consecutive games just to avoid the Lakers. Well, I'm not complaining for them losing to the Mavs. I am enjoying this.
In fact, it's pretty stupid if you think about it. I mean, okay, the way the Lakers played today doesn't quite show it. But if at some stage playing the Lakers is inevitable, which let's assume Clippers come back and win their series, and let's say Phoenix knocks out the Lakers. If that was going to happen, you don't care where you finish anyway, the Clippers.
Exactly.
But they engineered their position to avoid the Lakers in the first round. Okay, what was your plan? Because if the Lakers are as good as you fear them to be, then they're gonna clear their first round series. You'll have to face them should you get to the semis. Wouldn't you want to face the Lakers early when they're still jittery, when their stars are just coming?
I agree.
It makes no sense to me. And also, that's when it became personal with the Mavericks. that kind of disrespect doesn't fly in the league. These European boys smile all the time, but it looks like they're made of sturdier stuff. They're lighting them up. I am loving it.
Absolutely. 3 big games coming up tomorrow. First up, the Wizards against the 76ers. I don't think we should talk too much about that unless you see an upset happening there. Any chance that Russ and Beal can upset Embiid and the Sixers? Okay, let's leave it at that.
The East is too easy to call at this stage, man. Like Boston have no chance. Wizards have no chance. Unless there are catastrophic injuries, like these are done. There's no debate there. Miami has no chance against the Bucks. This I've been saying for a couple of months now. Miami has no chance against the Bucks.
Right. The game that's left out is the most interesting game, the Knicks versus the Hawks. Quite a game, the first one with Trae Young getting that game winner and the New York crowd booing him. And today the New York mayor spoke up about how Trae Young should stop getting fouls. How New York doesn't like him and stuff like that.
I thought it was before the game that he said that.
It was today. It was just today in the lead up to tomorrow's game. I think.
Why would you do that?
Absolutely right. So it's going to be a fun game regardless. I would like to see Trae Young come and shush the crowd again, but I'm banking on New York Knicks to win this one. Actually, I think the Knicks were off to a slow start. Randall had a bad game. I think he'll be back. He won the most improved player award today. I think that should boost him, and I think they'll be back. They will slow down the game like they did all season, and they should get the win tomorrow against the Hawks, especially with the home crowd.
I want this to be a 7-game series.
Yeah,
get a chance to really see because there's a bunch of youngsters on both sides, right? That you're seeing for the first time or that you've not seen all that much of in the playoffs.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what each of them is made of when they're really tested, like go through a 7-game grind. Neither of these teams are going to make it to the final, so you might as well.
Yep.
It's okay if they get exhausted as long as they make a good series out of it.
And the third game would be Utah Jazz taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, Jazz are in
That's
just Jazz need a win because they lost the first home game. They can't afford to go 2-0 down and then go to Memphis because then it'll be trouble trouble calling for them. Any chance of Memphis upsetting the Jazz once again?
Yeah, absolutely. What's so I would have they declared what Donovan Mitchell's
Yeah, I think he'll play. They've not yet confirmed it, but I think he'll play.
because he was fuming that he was asked to sit out
Yep.
game one. They'll do a good game. I expect them to. This is an interesting series. The next 2 games are key. If Utah pick up the next 2 games, I think it's a bridge too far for Memphis. I think then it starts because every missed shot, the pressure mounts, and maybe it'll get tough for them. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe this is an all-time great team and they come back. But yeah, but
I
I'm with
agree. I
Utah on
mean,
this
Utah
one.
had a terrible first game, right? They were missing all their threes, and they lived the entire season by hitting those threes. So you can't expect them to go cold once again. It's not likely. I mean, the law of averages will just catch up. So I think they'll have a decent game, and that should be enough to beat the Grizzlies. Especially given that the Grizzlies have been hustling, right? They had all must-win games until now. So it's the
It's
same
not sustainable to
exactly. So we'll see how that goes. But a lot of matches coming up. As always, great fun catching up, and I will catch you tomorrow after tomorrow's games.
By the way, hold on. What do you think? So I just this whole playoff series. All this while I was thinking it's the 2 games at home, then 3 games away, and then the home team advantage gets 2 games back. So what is it now? It's 2-2-1-1.
2-2-1-1, and the 7th game with the higher seed.
Yeah, the home advantage. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the bet? LeBron will say whoever came up with this should get fired. Should it go to a game 7 against Phoenix? Because it'll be home court advantage to
I didn't
Phoenix. Just like the playing games, like whoever came up with this needs to be fired. I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of players just like me forgot this format because last year was the bubble and it really didn't matter
Right.
who's home, who's away. So I would fully expect LeBron to be outraged. Should this go to a game 7, which would of course be played in Phoenix, he should come out and say, much like the playing games, whoever came up with this concept should get fired.
Yep. I think LeBron's never played this format because the year they changed this, he was not in the
he
playoffs.
wasn't in the
And then
exactly.
last year it was the bubble. It didn't really matter who had home advantage.
We should pretty much explain why I don't even remember this because I just gave up on that playoffs that year. Right. Cool.
All right then. Catch you tomorrow.
All right, man. Cheers.